Welcome everyone to episode 6 of Waste Free Wednesday. Last week, Emma gave us a run through, an overview really of food waste, which is a huge topic. If you want to watch last week's video, there was some stats about how big a problem it is. 7.1 million tonnes from UK households every single year. Massive problem. We've got a little bit better year on year. We've got a 7% reduction that RAP announced the other year. So things are getting better, but it's still one of our biggest problem areas, and certainly what goes in our black bins to be burned at the incinerator. It's still far too much food waste that could have been eaten. It could have just not been bought in the first place. It could have gone into a compost bin. All sorts of options that could have worked better. Today we're going to start to drill down a little bit more specifically in solutions in tackling food waste. Today is called Buy What You Eat, and Emma's going to take over with that, and then I'm going to pop back afterwards to do a little bit about sort of techie stuff, some apps that you might be interested in using, or one of them's a website that may help you to plan better and create like a shopping list that's interactive. Okay, so Emma, are you ready to go?
Episode 2 of food waste is Buy What You Eat. RAP, who are the people behind the Love Food Hate Waste campaign, they used to sort of say there were various ways to cut down on food waste, and they talked about portion control and this, that and the other, and there was about 6 or 7 which are still very valid, but to make it easier for campaigns and things, they now have just 3 things that they like people to do. I touched on this last week. So the first one is Buy What You Eat, which I'm going to talk about today. It's not a massive amount of information, but it gives people, a point to start thinking about, oh, right, yes, I can do that when I'm doing my shopping. Then they like you to eat what you buy. So that's things like, if you've actually bought it, well, please eat it. Obviously, it's not rocket science. In my case, if it's been bought and it's a carrot, it gets eaten by a horse, but that's another story. And then their third one is savvy storage. Actually, once you bought your food, actually storing it correctly so that it lasts longer. And if you can't do anything about actually eating it, within its use-by dates, then you can actually, use your freezer as your friend, as I always say. So I'm going to cover step 1 today, which is planning. Obviously, the best way to reduce the amount of food that you buy is to actually have a shopping list. So if you can actually plan your meals and plan your shopping, that certainly helps. I notice that when I sit down and I do 5 or 6 meals planned for the week, and then I do a shopping list, I certainly spend a lot less on food than if I wander vaguely around the supermarket with my head in the clouds, usually after I've been to the yard and, I'm tired and all I'm thinking about is I've got to eat because I'm hungry. So by planning, obviously gives you the opportunity to use up what you've already got. When I'm being sensible and I'm planning and writing shopping lists, I go through and I check what I've got. I have to confess, it's usually in the fridge. I look in my cupboard and I look at the 6 tins of chopped tomatoes and think, maybe I don't need any more of those. But it does mean that you do only buy what you need. And it stops these impulse buys. I'm dreadful for impulse buys, I will admit it. I'll see something on special offer and go, oh, I like that, and I'll have that, and I'll have that for my tea or something. 99.9 times, I do actually use it up, but occasionally I've fallen into that trap of buying something because you think it's going to be used and then it doesn't. But it also gives you, I think, a chance to actually, have a better diet. If you're not rushing around, we're all guilty of it. We all work, we've all got busy lives, we've got families, we've got, in my case, horses, and we just run around like lunatics. And I'm dreadful for just grabbing something when I'm hungry. And, my go-to, if I've come back from the yard or work and I'm tired and I'm hungry, is jacket potato and cheese and beans. And I know that's not like me phoning up for a curry or a takeaway of some sort, but it's it's not the greatest, but it does mean that if I'm planning my meals, particularly when I knuckle down and I do something like Weight Watchers, because I need to get back on it, it does help me eat a very good diet. It helps you to use up your food from your freezer. That's another area, where I fall foul. And I'm telling you all this not because I'm like, oh, look at me, aren't I really rubbish? But because actually to prove that it's my job, and even I do it. So, what hope that the poor public have? But I've got a freezer full of food that is bits and pieces. I've bulk cooked and put stuff in the freezer, or I've bought stuff. So, every so often I do have to sit down and actually use something up out of my freezer so I can put something else in usually. It gives you an opportunity to prepare meals in advance. My slow cooker is my lifesaver in the winter, because if I get myself organised, I can actually put stuff in the morning before I go to work. And then when we get back from the yard in the evening, the smell when you walk through the house, as you can imagine, is wonderful. And it's usually, just got to throw something else in a pan and I've got a meal. And also, if you've got children, get your children involved. If they feel that they're involved in the decision making when it comes to food, they sometimes feel that they actually, it's important and they know why it's important. And then they actually will eat it. Dictating to children what they're going to eat sometimes is not the best option. But if you give them the opportunity to say, well, I'd like to have, X on this day, then they might feel more inclined to eat it. So there's various ways you can do it. Whichever District Council, just before lockdown, produced a really good meal planner, and it was a meal planner and shopping list. Should we ever get any events over the next few months and few years, that will be available for all the volunteers to use at events in Wychavon. I've got a meal planner and shopping list thing that's stuck to the side of my fridge, or just use a piece of paper. My mum's favourite thing was the back of birthday and Christmas cards. She always used to keep a stack of cards, and then every week she'd start to write as she used something up. She'd write down that she needed it. And my dad's followed that sort of trend since he's been on his own. So it's a great way of keeping track rather than scrabbling around at the last minute going, oh, I've got to go to Tesco's, and then, forgetting to buy something. There's various techie things that Rob's going to go through to give you, apps and things like that. So, there are various ways that you can actually be a bit more organised with your time. Plan which meals you're going to want, if possible. We all have our favourite meals that we like to eat regularly, so keep doing that, keep churning them out. I like to have some variety, which is why I've got lots and lots of Weight Watchers cookery books and things like that, so they're great for throwing stuff together in sort of 20 minutes, half an hour. It's obvious. Check your cupboards and your fridge and see what actually you need rather than what you want. There's so many recipes obviously out there, and lots of apps, lots of recipe books. I know it's, again, time consuming, but just spending half an hour every week sitting down, flicking through recipe books and thinking, oh yes, I like that, because that, again, like I said, it gives you variety, because sometimes we can be very samey with what we eat and we get bored. And that's when you start to sort of just give up buying decent food and just living on takeaways and things like that. I've found that, just doing 5 meals or 6 meals, but not dedicating them to a particular day helps me. I used to go, right, on Monday I'm having this, Tuesday I'm having this. And you'd get to like Monday and you go, actually, no, I don't want that. And then you'd think, oh, I haven't made it. And then you'd potentially have wasted the food. But if you just list 5 or 6 different meals and just pick one every night, or just put one night, have a guess from the freezer and see what you can come out with. It's always useful to have ideas saved up for other recipes. If you find a recipe you like or a meal that you like, but you haven't actually cooked it, well, you can always keep it. And one of the things I do, because I'm on my own when my daughter's at uni, I batch cook. So I'll cook 2 portions and I'll either put one in the freezer or I give one to my dad to make life easier for him. And that's why my freezer is full of tubs, because obviously I'll cook a two people portion of chili or bolognese, and then half of it goes in the fridge. So, if it's like it says here, make a list of what you need and then, what you have. And, you should be able to actually build up a bit of a repertoire of meals and things. And you should by then hopefully know, what you need for all these different meals. So once you've actually done your planning, then you actually, you venture out into the shops. So, do stick to your shopping list. That's another of my tricks, is I do write it and I cross it all off, but then occasionally I deviate from it. Don't be tempted by offers. The bog off is the big one that the supermarkets like us to fall foul of, and that so many people fall foul of. And I always say, and I it's one thing I do stick by, is I only have a bog off if it's non-perishables. So if they've got washing powder or toilet roll or cat food or something like that on special offer, I will buy that, because obviously it will get used, but there's no use by dates that then force you into a panic. Things like when you buy great big blocks of cheese and you get 2 for £5. Oh, that's great, but are you actually going to eat 2 enormous blocks of cheese in that time? Obviously, if you're shopping for a relative who's shielding, like me, I do my dad's shopping for him, so sometimes a bog off might work for us. And date labels, the supermarkets are very good at putting the thing that has the shortest use by date at the front of the shelves. So you'll see me, rooting through the backs of the freezer or the fridge, looking for the chicken with the longest use by date, because that's caught me. I've not checked dates, and I've bought stuff and the use by date was actually the same day that I bought it. I did manage to eat it, but it has caught me out on a couple of occasions. And it is hard, but buying smaller quantities, everything seems to be geared up for, 2 or more people, and a lot of people who are on their own struggle to actually, find enough food that is in small portions. But then, like I said, you can freeze it, you can donate it to another member of the family. And there are ways around it, but I think they're slowly getting better at making things smaller, and they are suddenly realizing that there are a lot of people that live on their own and they don't want a microwave meal every night. They actually want to cook. So we should hopefully get there. Using IT, they say take a shelfie before you go shopping and actually have a list of what you've got in your fridge or your cooker in front of you. Or again, using the recipe apps that Rob's going to talk about. Internet shopping, click and collect, that's a great way, I think, of sticking to a budget as well. If you've only got a set amount of money every week for your food, you won't be tempted by offers. You know exactly how much you're spending. When you get the delivery, I say here, no need for bags. At the moment they are, because of the whole coronavirus thing, but hopefully once things are eased on that, you can go back to having, your click and collect or your delivery without bags. And it is more environmentally friendly. There's 20, 30, whatever orders in one van, as opposed to everybody going to the supermarket. And you can choose when you do your shopping. You don't think, oh, it's Saturday, I've got to go shopping. You can, these click and collects at Tesco's, for example, they're open till 8:00 at night. And you can have your shopping delivered from 8:00 in the morning till 10:00 at night, So it's a bit more convenient for people. And then the other technology is apps. And at this point, I will pass over to Rob.
So I've tried to find things that I think are effective at reducing food waste. And one of them is Yumly. The other one I'll show is the BBC Good Food website, which isn't quite as good. And then a couple of other things that I've just recently found, actually. I went back to some, because apps, as you know, is a fast-moving market. I researched this to death about a year ago, and then I went back and it was just like, oh my goodness, I haven't heard of half of these. So there is so much going on at the moment. There are far more food waste apps that I'm not going to talk about here. I'm only talking about stuff that's related to buy what you eat. That's the planning and the list side of it. But I will mention a few things as we go through the other food waste sessions, which are completely different things about sharing food and stuff like that. Now, Yumly, there are other apps that do this, but I just think it did it particularly well. It's on Android and Apple as well, so it's on both markets. It is free and stays free. It's not one of those ones that charges extra down the line as well. What I like about it, unlike the BBC Good Food website, which is very good, I use it all the time, but it's only got the recipes that are on there from the users. Now, Yumly is different because it accesses pretty much all the recipes it can find on the internet, whether that's a personal blog or a reputable site. So you are accessing, I mean, thousands doesn't even cut it. I mean, you're talking millions. What's particularly good about that is if you have dietary preferences, when you've filtered all your different preferences in, and I've tested it like by doing that, I've literally pretended that I have every dietary condition under the sun, and yet it still finds recipes. And that's pretty amazing because I've tried that on other recipe websites and recipe apps, and it just says no recipes found. It's not searching across all the internet recipes. Now, there are downsides with that, which I'll come back to later on, but in terms of finding recipes, nothing's better. And as you can see on the picture there, you get a lovely, nice, big picture of the recipe. You can see how many people like it. So you've got a pretty good indication if it's a good one or not. So it's quite easy to find recipes, and then you can save them into your yums, as they call them, your favourites, basically. So it means you can have all of your favourite little meals ready to go. But it doesn't stop there, and this is where the shopping list bit comes in. If you like a recipe, you can click a button and it will automatically add all the ingredients to a shopping list. Now, you could add 2 or 3 recipes to your shopping list, and it will actually interactively sort those items. So the dairy things go in dairy, the bakeries go in bakery. So as you're going around a supermarket, if you've ever tried to shop for a recipe, for example, or several recipes, if you haven't spent the time sorting the items on your list out, you'll know how frustrating that is. You end up spending 3 times as long in the supermarket just going back and forth and asking someone where they keep the saffron and things like that. It's quite frustrating. This tries to get around that problem interactively without you having to do a lot of that moving items around. And it does work. I've used it a few times. And it's quite clever, really, how they group stuff. I think they're not always going to get it right. For example, I'm just looking on the list there. Under drinks, there is quite a mixture of stuff there you wouldn't necessarily find in the same place in a supermarket. Coffee, yes, obviously a drink, but the coffee tea aisle is kind of a different aisle to where you'd find your almond milk, for example. So, yeah, it's not perfect, but that's because every supermarket's a bit different. And what's also great about this, the shopping list idea, is that when you've got those ingredients ready to go on your phone, before you go shopping, you can tick off the items that you've got in the kitchen. So straight away, you're stopping the duplication method. Now, if you had printed off that recipe and took it to the supermarket with you, you may have had duplications. So I like that because it's getting you to think a little bit smarter about how you're shopping. It's also great for using your leftovers as well, but I'll save that for when we talk about leftovers later on. What's the only downsides I can genuinely see for Yumly is there's a lot of US measurements in there which might throw you, and obviously the names of certain types of things like a zucchini, for example. Recipe numbers is the other one. You grab a recipe from the internet, as Yumly does. It could be for 4 people, 6 people, 2 people. That might not be right for you. So you've got to try and think around the problem. So I think that's a slight weakness because you could end up buying a lot more flour or something than you actually needed. BBC Good Food, similar method. I just don't think it's as smart. It doesn't work in a visionary sense overall, but some people I think will be more comfortable using the Good Food website rather than Yumly. What you don't have, as I said before, though, is you don't have as many recipes. But there are some very good recipes on there. But if you started putting vegan and gluten-free, you'd have about 3 recipes left. So that's the only downside, I suppose you could say, to it. But you can create a shopping list. So on that screenshot there, if you can see it at the bottom, it says add to shopping list. And you click that button And what it does is a pop-up comes up on the screen and it lists all of those items, quite nicely laid out, as you can see there. They've improved it a bit since I last went on. The problem is, what do you do with that shopping list? Well, it says at the bottom there, you can get a shareable link. What that basically means is it's forcing you to use a different platform called Whisk. And for me, that's where it falls down, is that you're on one platform, but it's pushing you to use another one. And that overcomplicates things for me. And you have to sign up to Whisk as well. The simplest method is probably send list or print. And you could have a printable copy, or you could send it to your phone by email or something like that. So a paper copy would look a little bit like this. They lay it out so you can tick the boxes. You could alternatively perhaps print it to PDF and have it just on your phone if you knew how to do that. An emailed version would just look a little bit like pretty much the same. You could still access the list. That doesn't need a Whisk account, which is good, so you can get that straight away. But I think it's messy, forcing you from one thing to another. Yumly has it all in one app, which is much smarter and easier to use, I think, personally. You might also want to use a shopping list app. So rather than a recipe app, you'll find it in a different sort of category on the app markets. And there are loads of these. I couldn't even begin to go through all of them. So I had to just look at kind of which ones were the most popular and most well-resourced. And probably any list is about the best, I think. It's slightly intuitive, like Yumly was, in that it will group the items into category, which is a nice idea. And also, when you start typing, it will guess what it is, just like when you're typing in your text these days, and it guesses ahead what you're about to type. Not all list apps do that. So the fact that it has got a lot of food items in there, even quite unusual ones, makes it a lot quicker to type things on your list. And as you can see, you can edit the item. If you click on it, you can say that you've already bought it and stuff like that. So that's quite a simple way, but a little bit of intuitiveness in there. And it has got some meal planning features in there, which I haven't been able to test, unfortunately, but it is very well reviewed. And as Emma said, there is no shame if all that stuff is too techie for you. There is no shame for taking a photo of your shelves. I think that's a fantastic way of stopping you from duplicating. I have to do that because there's just certain items I can never quite remember if I've got it in or not. And if I haven't thought to check beforehand, it's just a nice, easy way of doing it. So I think that was all I had on that one, but feel free to ask any questions.
So they're very good points. And actually, I've been following these anyway. The other thing I actually used, not expecting everybody to do it, but if you've got Alexa or the Google thing, I actually use that a lot for creating my shopping list. So as I'm running out of baking powder or whatever it is, I just I better not say the word because I just wake up and I just say add that to the shopping list, and then and it just at the end of the week or whatever it is, I just go through that list and all the items.
Oh, that's clever, because I've got an Alexa and I know that you can use them. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, no, sorry, she hasn't
it wakes up. I call it Albert, by the way. Albert.
Yes, I've got an Albert, and I hadn't even thought about using it for shopping lists.
Yeah, I just say Albert. Albert put bananas on the shopping list, That's it.
I use Google one to do that, and then the shopping list is automatically a shortcut on the phone. So when you're shopping, you can just look and see what it is and some offers to buy them.
Is that what? Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that. Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, I use it, but I've got the shopping list as a shortcut onto the telephone, so that when I'm shopping, you can just swipe across and delete them as you buy items.
Yeah.
So,
it's a bit different with Google, isn't it? Because Google benefits from the whole sort of apps thing, so it links with your phone a little bit better. Alexa, now I don't use Alexa regularly.
One of the things which two of my daughters buy meals from Gusto.
Alexa,
and I know you might think, well, it all comes pre-packaged, but they actually get what they want.
Albert.
So they never have any food waste, but equally they never have anything different in the fridge, because they get exactly what the meal takes.
It is actually
if it wasn't for the packaging, I think it works very well for people. But
I'm just going to just see if I can actually
gross up a meal for 2 to a meal for 4, or you buy 2 meals
the Alexa app, is it, Cyrus?
You get little
Yeah, there is an
I've
Andy.
got
Just
Yeah.
a teaspoon of soy sauce in or something.
and it
So
just
you
goes
do get
straight
more
onto
packaging,
the
but
phone.
you don't waste any food.
Yeah, yeah. And they're expensive though, aren't they?
Doing it.
Yeah.
That's it, for meals for 2 people, for I think it's like £30 or £40 for 5 meals or something. Which and it's all this good stuff when it comes, and you get a variety all the time.
Yeah.
I think
yeah.
you're not actually going to the shops, but it is good.
Yeah, I've got a friend who uses HelloFresh, which is a similar thing.
Hello Fresh, Gusto, wherever.
Yeah, you're right. Once they sort out the packaging thing, which quite a few of them are working on at the moment, I think, and there are some startups that have gone in with the zero waste route because they'll struggle to get the market presence because Gusto and HelloFresh have just took over that, haven't they? But yeah, no, I think we mentioned it last time. I don't think you were there at the time, Peter, and it's an interesting model. Be interesting to see where it goes in the future. Right, thank you for that. I think we're kind of done.
I think we're more or less done, yeah. So, did I show my last slide? I don't think I did I? Which was next week we are talking about eat what you buy.
Yes.
And I want everybody to bring their favourite recipe along using leftovers. I didn't show that slide. And my favourite recipe was devised by Andy Waters, who's a chef in Birmingham that I worked on. I'm going to see if I can find the photos. When I worked at Birmingham City Council, me and 2 of the presenters that was then BRMB went to his restaurant in Brindley Place, and they'd literally just emptied their fridges out that morning and taken all this stuff. And Andy was tasked with cooking with it. And he created the most amazing meal from leftovers and stuff that Elliot had found in his fridge. So I'm going to share that with people. But yeah, if you've got a favourite recipe, please bring it with you so we can have a recipe swapping session.
A recipe off.
A recipe off, yes.